Ciao guys, good afternoon and good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to ask you if you can hear me well and if you can see me well. Said in Italian, ragazzi, mi vedete? Si sente? So you can comment in the chat. I will read your comment, and after you're okay, we will start this funny evening all together. In the meanwhile, just I am having a look. Perfect. Yes, perfect. Thanks for LNV. So we are ready to start. So quick introduction for all of you that are not used to this format. We are an Italian YouTube channel. We have also an Instagram page. Since some time, we do some live session in the evening at 9 p.m. and we stream both in YouTube and in Facebook. In the meanwhile, thank you, man. Sure, man, everything is fine. So it means that the connection at least is fine, and it is the most difficult part of this evening. As you already saw, the really good part of these events is that you can comment in the chat, both in YouTube, both in Facebook. We read your comment, we show your comment, and by this we can really interact each other and ask to the guest all the questions that you have. The more you write, the more you interact with us, the more we enjoy this session. It is the first time we go global, so we speak in English. So let's say, I tell you since now, excuse for my bad English, but it is a sort of experiment. It's the first time. I hope that you will be able to understand and to interact with us. Anyhow, if any of you is Italian and does not understand anything about English, please write to me in chat, because I saw that Drago already asked for some translation. And for the most important answer, I will translate it to you. Today, I am very, very happy and also honored to have one guy that is for sure really known in the industry. Is around since a while, and in my opinion, he is one of the father of the hydrofoils. So give me 1 second, and we will start this event together with Gunnar. Gunnar, be ready. 3, 2, 1. You are live.
Good
Here you
evening.
are.
Good evening.
Ciao, Gunnar. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Very good, very good. Gunnar, today we will speak about a lot of different topics, and we will step by step read all the comments. In the meanwhile, Family Flyer Foiling wrote, "Hi Michele, so happy to be able to write in English and not in my terrible Italian," because he has the opposite issue than me. So he is English, native English, and he lives in Italy. In this case, I am in the opposite side. So guys, as we said, all the questions you have, put it in chat, and Gunnar will be very happy to answer all your questions. You have a lot of questions about technical detail, about hydrofoil, about stabilizer. So I am really ready to ask a lot of questions. But first of all, Gunnar, I will ask you to present yourself for the people that does not know you yet. So who you are, which is your history, and how do you, let's say, fell in love with the hydrofoils?
All right. I'm Gunnar Binyash, also known amongst the locals here in Fuerteventura as Chinatown. I have been doing foiling since late 2009. That's when I started. Before that, I was a professional kite surfer. Yeah, and I've always been flying like kites since I was like 10 years old. So I've been sort of a fanatic about anything that sort of flies around in the air under the water. And in 2009, I bought myself a Carafino foil. That's one of the first guys who built something a bit lighter. The hydrofoils that were before then, which I actually tried one of those in 2005, I think. That was like the Rush Randall air chair, like modified one, which was like a giant piece of aluminum essentially and weighed like 20 kilos. And that wasn't that great. And then when the first Carafino came out, in 2009 with the first sort of carbon foil. It was the first one you could ride without boots. It was light at the time, and it sort of opened it up for us. And that's the one I learned how to hydrofoil properly on. And then, but because those things were not the best constructed back then, but they kept breaking a lot, so quickly learned how to fix them. And then essentially we decided to make our own here on Fuerteventura. Me together and a shaper friend of mine, Helmut, we had the Magma foils, which we started in 2010.
So that was your brand?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did that until 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I've been sort of pro rider for a lot of the kite brands. So, and I was racing quite a lot. So that's sort of where the hydrofoiling came in. And then, yeah, I mean, my sort of hydrofoil racing career really actually properly started because I took a break from like the big board racing, between big board racing and hydrofoil racing. And then when I sort of joined Ozone, I was then racing quite a lot until I essentially retired in 2019 from the kitefoil racing. And then when I was riding for North, I essentially started wingfoil racing for fun initially, and then when I was doing really well, it sort of ended up turning into another. It's like a second career for, like, let's say, the older guy. And yeah, I did that until last year, and last year I decided to, like, that's it, that's enough competing.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically nowadays just full on only into design. But I've been designing hydrofoils essentially since 2010 and hydrofoil boards.
Okay. So hydrofoil and boards, I think, because
Yeah.
behind me I have a Barracuda XL, which is I think one of your recent creation.
Yeah.
But my light wind board is an Indiana SUP downwind 7.6, and I think you designed that too.
Yeah.
And I don't think you follow all, let's say, all the video we do and all the review we do, but I always say that that 7.6, in my experience, is by far the board that keep me flying with less wind. It's big. That is a sort of cons, because 7.6 is very long. But for the very marginal condition we have in this area, because we are not lucky as you in Fuerteventura, the 7.6, your 7.6 is by far the board that really changed completely my way of making wing foil, because I can go out in the sea almost in spring and summer, almost every day. In winter, not a lot. But I could also do SUP wave, SUP foiling with that. So it's a very good compromise.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. In the meanwhile, Gunnar, we just have a look to the chat. Jean-Luc Foiler, hello guys. He's one of the top hydrofoiler we have here. By far a level, an expertise that for me is just a dream, I have to say.
Yeah. I just see a question here from Wingfoil Advice.
Yes. I will read it just in order that if someone is driving, he can hear the question. Hi, Gunnar, nice to meet you. Last summer I was in Mayanico and I saw you riding some wave. Your wing was a custom, or Indiana are looking for a new wing line?
Yeah. A mistake. Last summer, I probably was on the Aqueous wing. If that was the see-through wing that you saw. That's actually from two friends of mine, Stefano, who's the designer for Mike's Lap Foils, and Frank Rosine, who's actually the SAP foil importer for Germany. They decided to make a complete Mylar wing. So basically same material as a windsurf sail, and so not ripstop. And that's completely see-through, it has battens. That's what I've been riding pretty much exclusively since the beginning of last year. Indiana are not making any wings. We have no plans on making any wings just yet.
Okay, so just I will share my screen. Let's see if everything will work this evening. No, okay, I cannot share my screen. I will share it later because the website is blocked. No, issue of my PC, not of of the technology. So you are already now, let's say, yet now using the Aquos wing.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because I ask you this because now I will succeed sharing it. I am completely sure. Okay, very good. Because sometimes we see you on the social, no, Instagram, Facebook, and this is a very recent image.
Yeah, I think I posted that today.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the time flies. Yes, today. And while this one is another one that you posted some days ago. So both of these are from Aquos.
No, the one you're looking at right now is from F2. That's their Team Glide. Like I said, I'm not like sponsored by Aquos or anybody at the moment for that matter, which allows me to basically try out as many things as I can. And like I said, the F2 is quite interesting because it's actually it's the same as the Sapfoil wing. They're basically produced or designed by the same people. And that was quite interesting to test that. So at the moment I'm testing. I've got Ozone Ozone wings in my garage. I've got F2 wings. I've got the Aquos. Like especially for like performance riding and like so on, I'm mainly on the Aquos. I'm quite enjoying the F2 in waves at the moment. It's a really nice wave wing. It's really light.
Okay.
And then for like race training and stuff, I actually now have the Fusions from Ozone. So.
Okay, clear. But is it your typically working day? Because 3 days ago you published this photo. Then today this other one. So what do you do during your day? Except surfing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is part of my day.
Okay.
A large part of my day is involved in essentially also doing the marketing, social media, and also quite a lot of website work for Indiana. So like my usual day, it starts, I get up, make myself some coffee, make breakfast and stuff for my daughter. And then when she goes off to school, then I sit down in front of the computer, check what needs to be done on our website, if there's anything else on my to-do list. Once that's done, I will then check if the conditions are good to go testing. To go on the water. If it's nice and windy, I can test wing gear. If it's not windy, I can go test pump gear or paddle up stuff. Or if it's wavy and not windy, like test the surf foiling and the subfoiling gear. So I'll spend that time testing gear until about 2 o'clock, and then my daughter comes home from school, so I have to be back then, and I go through all that, and then I'll typically then, once she's gone to bed, then sit down and do typically design work stuff where I just want some peace and quiet. That's typically, I design my boards and my foils usually like just before going to bed.
Yes. Very good. So, guys, in the meanwhile, if you have any question, even the more stupid question at the end of the day are never stupid. So don't hesitate to ask in the chat. In the meanwhile, Gunnar, since you... Wait a second. We have a question. Foil MV.
Yeah.
A good question. Can you tell us how you ended working with Indiana and why?
Yeah, that's a long story. The history goes back quite far. A friend of mine, Stan Koish, you might recognize the name from the SK bars. Those are like kite bars specifically for kite foil racing. Stan came down to Fuerteventura, I think 2015, and we had some rides together, and it was quite cool. And I started testing his bars for him. And then he recommended to the boss of Indiana that, hey, if you want to learn the kite foil, you got to go and meet Gunnar down on Fuerte, and he'll teach you the kite foil. So I think 6-7 months later, Mauros came down. He's like, hey, Stan said I should pop by your shop, and can you teach me the kite foil? I was like, yeah, sure. Obviously, yes. So I taught him to kite foil. I didn't actually know that he was the boss from Indiana at the time and anything like that. So I did some kite foil lessons with him. That was quite cool. And then we got to talking a bit about the brand. For me, it was quite cool because one of my first like longboard skateboards was from Indiana.
Okay.
In university. So I was like, wow, cool. It's you. So that was amazing then just to like sort that out. And then towards the end of his trip, he was like, look, we're like my brand Indiana's, we're thinking about getting into foils and so on. And here's this OEM foil from China. Like, what do you think about it? And yeah, it was back then, it was 2016, OEM foils from China that weren't good. It was pretty ridiculous, that thing. And I basically told him, look, if you want a foil, I can design one for you fairly quickly. And then he was like, oh, cool. Yeah, let's try that. So back then I designed our first S850 foil for them, which was essentially a surf foil, fairly big, fairly chunky at the time. And I basically worked from then on, like sort of as a freelancer for them, designing the first foil boards that were there, the first subfoil boards. We did a few kite foil boards at the time too. And it was sort of slowly developing. Like Indiana was like sort of more trying to go for the beginner market and so on. And at the time I had my own shop. I was team writer for Ozone and so on. And in 2019, when winging came about and so on, I was still freelancing for Indiana. And then I started also then writing and testing for North quite a lot. So I was then splitting my time between North and Indiana. And then COVID happened. Mm-hmm. And then everything sort of went to hell a little bit. But Indiana actually did pretty well. And before COVID started, I actually designed the whole range of wing foil boards for Indiana, which were the first wing foil boards. And when COVID happened, we got shut down here on Fuerteventura, but like on the mainland, everybody went crazy. Like, we got to stay home, but we're going to buy gear. So it was actually amazing for Indiana to really like see that all the boards were selling quite good, and it was quite successful. And after COVID, yeah, it's when my sort of racing career took off with North. I did like 2 very successful years with North. Like I won the Spanish championship twice. I won the Tour 3 times in a row. Was fairly successfully internationally too. Like was the Masters World Champion for the IWSA in 2022. And that was pretty good. And then when sort of my deal with North ended in 2023, that's when I went to work for Indiana full time.
Okay. So it means that you are with Indiana full time since 2 years.
Yeah.
2023, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that honestly, I saw, and we will speak later about it because I would like to at least emphasize this fact. I saw an increase of performance from Indiana product, incredible. In my opinion, incredible. Then I would like also to go a little bit in detail, but just to mention it because I will never be tired to say it. Here I have a Marlin M, and we tested it, me and also my mate Cash. We tested it in several conditions, and we have been completely surprised, but really surprised, because we were expecting let's say some quality, build quality and performance, but not so high, honestly. And in our opinion so far, in this case it depends, this is for the wave riding, but then we could have also look, I'm sorry, but when I move from one side the camera is from the other side, so I'm always moving, but also thanks to the monoblock construction and to the profile of the Marlin, in our opinion today really Indiana can compete one by one with the best brand on the market regarding hydrofoil. I mentioned the Marlin. I have behind here the Barracuda. Then later I want to quickly have a look together with the hydrofoil portfolio. And I have to say that really Indiana is making big step ahead, in my opinion, at least compared to some years ago regarding the build quality and the performance of the hydrofoil.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, just have a look to the chat. I looked at the all Indiana gear and I was thinking, are you? So it means he's referring to the wing. Then we have. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, AV Tech is that. Yeah.
Foil 964 MAR complete. What do you think about that for a beginner of 65 kilos with 108 liters carbon bores? What are the advantages of the MAR? is the new line actually the same to the old one?
Okay. Yeah. If you're referring to the new line as the rides, yeah, the rides are essentially exactly the same as the MAR. We decided to only continue them as the rides in the 3 large sizes because we are keeping the MARs as the entry-level beginner foils. And what makes it so good, so to come to your question, is a 964 MAR, is it good for a 65 kilo beginner and a 108 liter board? Definitely. The MARs are very, very neutral. They have a very sort of linear power development when they rise up. And have a very, let's say, limited speed potential. So for a beginner, it's amazing because it's a foil that's immediately comfortable and will really help your learning process because it's not sort of scary in any way. It's like driving like a Volkswagen. It'll come up as you expect it to. It will balance itself quite nicely, and it will stay at a nice, comfortable speed at all times. The maneuvers are easy on it. So it's your perfect companion for learning, even at 65 kilos with this fairly large foil.
Okay. Perfect. Guys, please tell us if Gunnar answered to your question. We have another question from Wingfoil Advice, which is really interesting. But before going there, I would like to share my screen, Gunnar, and I would like also for you to comment a little bit the hydrofoil portfolio that Indiana has, because it probably is not really easy for all the people to understand immediately which is the best hydrofoil for him. I have to say that compared to other brands, Indiana is really clean. So in particular with the new, let's say, product name that you defined this year. So Ride, Condor, Marlin, Barracuda, is very clear which is the target of its hydrofoil. But it will be nice for me if you would like to comment a little bit. Probably we could start speaking very quickly about the monoblock construction.
Sure.
It's up to you.
Okay, so the monoblock construction is, let's say, the best compromise out of performance and sort of ease of use. I should just grab one from behind here.
Wait a second. I will share full screen you. Wait a second. Here it is. Bye.
Okay. So as you can see, it's actually the glider itself. You have your front wing that's integrated into the front part of the fuselage. And then you have the tail section. The tail and the front part are connected here. If you see, there's an M6 screw that goes through. It connects both parts, so you can just keep them in one part when you're just keep it in your car traveling. And when the mast is fixed, you actually have two M8 screws, which actually again hold those two pieces strongly together. So you get a very rigid connection, and then also being able to control the thickness of the fairing section between the fuselage and the wing. Fairing is what we call essentially this radius here that you have on those four corners. For a really large wing, you want that area to be bigger, so really reinforce that area, because there's a lot of force here when you're pumping and turning, jumping. But on a smaller span wing, you don't need that much reinforcement here. Which, if you have like a fuselage that's separated from the front wing, you are limited to that surface area of that connection point where the screws are going through. Whereas here we can really choose, like smaller wings, we can really make it thin, very, very streamlined. And for the bigger wings where we need that connection to be really strong to take that pressure, we can go larger. So you end up with a very sort of customized design for every type of wing you have on here. What we also changed this year was our flat mount stabilizer system. The previous model of fuselage, we had like an actual cutout here where the stabilizer was sitting a little bit more inside, a bit more flush. But that we found that this way we could actually streamline it actually more by bringing the connection closer in, and we could work with sort of flatter shim systems and so on. While we wanted to also make it available, if you looked at our aluminum fuselages from the previous years, we had like multiple screw holes here, which we couldn't have by having that sort of cutout. So now we have the same option of having multiple fuselage lengths on the carbon fuselages too by using this system. And that's the monoblock system.
Yes. We tested it with the Marlin and we really liked it. But I have a question because it was a sort of, let's say, doubt that we had. But you can also take it in your hand yet because the question is regarding the back part where you have the stabilizer. No, you have multiple holes, so you can mount the stabilizer a little bit more in the front or more in the back.
Yeah.
We used the Marlin with the stub in the front. So it means that at the back, in the back, probably Orca. My wife will not be very happy because I almost destroyed a part of the kitchen because the Barracuda XL is big. Okay. Okay, this is what I mean. No. So in this case, we are having it
all the way in the back,
complete to the back.
The longest setting.
Yes, but you can put it also here. And the Marlin, we tested it with the front, more in the front, in order to have more, let's say, a more loose, agile behavior.
Yeah.
But in this case, in the back here, you have a sort of the final part of the fuselage is not covered by the stub.
Yeah.
So our question is, does this part over there that is not covered from the stub create any turbulence or anything which is, let's say, that you can feel while riding? Because we did not feel it, honestly.
No,
but
it doesn't.
Okay, wait a second. I don't want to destroy again the kitchen.
The fuselage is shaped essentially like a little bit like a rudder shape in the back.
Okay.
So if you look at sort of the shaping, actually, where's the good angle to show this? You see, it's fairly high but skinny, so the water flow goes past it. But as you see this sort of part here, as the water flows past it, it flows into that. Okay. So even if you have something like the overhang from this, you are not going to get like a huge amount of like vibration or drag from it because the water is flowing cleanly past that section.
Clear, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so coming back to the portfolio, no, of front wing. Okay, here we spoke about the monoblock construction, and here I will zoom it. Give me a second. Here we have, let's say, the part of the hydrofoils. Say, and here I can see that there are several names. So Barracuda, Wing, Marlin, Condor, and so on. Can you please explain to us which are the typical uses of the various products that are present in the catalog?
Okay, so let's start from the top. There we have the Barracudas. The Barracudas are high-performance, high-aspect front wings. High-aspect front wings are typically good for, let's say, high-performance winging, essentially racing, and however also glide. What makes, let's say, a high-aspect foil isn't automatically, let's say, the fastest on the water, but what it is the most efficient. You have the least amount of drag, plus you have the most amount of glide. Typically, that's why if you look at a sailplane, like a high-performance sailplane glider, it'll always have like a super high-aspect wing because there you have the largest amount of lift to drag ratio. So a high-aspect front wing for a hydrofoil will always essentially be the best for pumping performance, glide performance, and also like essentially the least resistance through the water. Now, the Barracuda is quite interesting in that fact that it covers not only winging, but it's also good for advanced pump foilers, for downwinding, and if it's good for downwinding, it's good for para-winging. And then the small size, like the Barracuda S, is actually a very high performance front wing that will work for all your racing applications too. So for wing foil racing, kite foil racing, that's the size class that it's in. So that can be used for that. And also for boosting for kite foiling, it's amazing. Like the Barracuda L and the M are amazing surf foils also for the intermediate to advanced rider. So that's that use case for the Barracuda. The Marlins are sort of like mid aspect, like high mid aspect, high performance front wings. These are mainly geared towards wing foiling, and the small sizes are also very good for kite foiling. What makes the Marlin really good for like wave riding is that it's a little bit more compact shaping. You don't have as much span. The power development compared to the Barracuda is very linear. The Barracuda is very progressive, which means it starts slow, but as you kick it, it actually comes up quite aggressively. Yeah? So especially if you're doing bottom turns and so on, you get that sort of slow entry and fast exit, sort of more surf style, let's say that. And whereas the Marlin has this very linear turn, so it basically how much energy you put in, it doesn't sort of kick out or accelerate, it sort of goes through that turn very controlled. So especially when you're riding very fast in breaking waves, it gives you a very confident feeling and a lot of control by having that sort of linear power development. For freestyle, it is great because you have less span. It's easier to land something that is not so high aspect, but it's still high performance enough to have that speed for that pop on the takeoff. So that's especially like from the S size down is exceptionally good for freestyle riding. And next step, not even a step down, it's the next range along is the Condor range. The Condor is our high performance pump foiling range. The big one, which is the Condor XL, is actually not in a monoblock construction. That's actually still in the HP construction because that was the first one that came out. And its two smaller brothers, the M and the S, are in monoblock constructions. These are designed for pump foiling, for dock starting. The Condor XL is the one that holds the world record for longest time pumped, 4 hours and I think 11 minutes is the actual time at the moment set by Nicholas. And then the Condor M is sort of like a nice sort of step forward. If it's not so much about long distance pumping, it's more about an easy start and having a little bit more agility than the Condor XL. And then the Condor S is for those lighter riders or very advanced pump foilers which want a little bit more speed, a lot of agility. It's these guys that love carving, wake thieving, and so on like that, or also wake foiling behind the boat. The Condor S is like the sweet little foil for that. And then in the HP range, we also have the Mantas. The Mantas is the Manta XL is actually the old 1396P. It's an amazing beginner dock starting foil. It's very controllable, very easy. It makes learning how to dock start like a no-brainer. Like it's if you want to learn the dock start, that's the front wing you want. And that, if you look at the complete kit, is paired with the Manta L stabilizer, which is a pure beginner stabilizer for pump foiling. It's very rounded. There's no sharp edges on it whatsoever. We went for a little bit thicker trailing edge because the sort of paradox is typically it's not the front wing that injures you. When you fall on your foil, it's typically the stabilizer that is the one that causes any damage to you, like your foot or if you land on it with your chest or something. So you spent a lot of time making that stabilizer extremely safe. So if you're looking at like a dock starting beginner package, the Manta XL is the one we specifically designed for that. And then we have the rides, the XL, the L, and the M. Those are the old MAR foils, which we now continue with the new updated graphics and so on, but it's the same easy to use front wing that the MAR were.
Clear. Understand. And yes, I have to say that I also winged only at the beginning to make a test with the Manta XL.
Yeah.
But no, it is impressive the amount of lift it has. So I think in 6 knot with your downwind, the 7.6 downwind board, I will be able to fly. But for sure, the life is made of compromises, no? So it means that at once when you reach a certain speed, then you are done. Let's say that for sure is not. But I think all the hydrofoils have their own characteristics, and it's important also to understand which is your typical uses of this.
Exactly.
I see some interesting question in the chat, but I would like just to share again my screen only for 1 second because one of the typical questions that the people and our subscriber asks me is which hydrofoil should I buy? I need to do this, which hydrofoil should I buy? And unfortunately, we will speak it later, but since the hydrofoil topic is not so easy, no, because you cannot say only, or at least now in the 2025, you cannot say only start with 2000 square centimeter for winging, because there are wings that will work best with winging, other that will not work. So it's more complex than what it seems. And I have to say that I had a look here on from your website. I think that you arrive here is the board finder, and it is really made very, very, very good. I like it a lot, because here I can select the sport wing. I can select okay, in this case, complete set, beginner, advanced, pro, and simply by these buttons here I see all the options that you, let's say, somehow automatically offer, and it works really fine. I mean, it's really, in my opinion, useful for the people that need to choose the hydrofoil and need to understand which is the one. And also I noticed that you define for this hydrofoil the level, no? So which is the expertise needed. So beginner, advanced, professional, and also some more detailed data about the characteristic of the hydrofoil. And honestly, I was already happy having a look to this. Then I selected this one, selection based on performance and agility, and I found out that I can also do the choice selecting let's say the different criteria based on max speed, pumpability, low takeoff. So if I want a front that pump very well, here I have all the selection which is already made by you. So honestly speaking, I think that it is the first time, honestly, that I see a so smart tool on a website, and I need to say congratulations to you, because it's very useful for a lot of people, because the hydrofoil product are a lot. And then we will have the stub, but I have here a stub, then I will ask you some questions also about the stub. So congratulations for this.
On the board finder, just like to say, we have a really good ambassador of ours, Patrick Federy. And it's actually his baby. He takes all the data we give him. Like it's essentially me and Maros and the other designers. We actually have like a whole database of all these different stats, and also those stars or like those circles we give out, trying to define what each foil or wing or actually any component is good for the uses. And then Patrick actually wrote all the code for the board finder, and he inputs that data in there, and that gives you this really cool tool. So shout out to him for that.
Very good, very good. Now come back to the question, because I see very interesting question.
So which one do we start with?
I discussed with Cash about it last, discussed, let's say, positively. We have the same doubt. Would you recommend an high aspect foil around 10-11 for wing foil wave condition, or foil around 7.5-8 like the Marlin? Which choice will be the best? Why? I think Cash asked this because I think you posted some images and you were riding a Barracuda in the waves.
So it really depends on your riding style and how you like to ride. Like I said, the biggest difference between the Marlin and the Barracuda, is the glide, first of all. The Barracuda has a lot more glide than the Marlin does. And so it works especially well in sort of like rounder waves, like sort of more of the swell riding, which actually is like what 90% of people do on like Europe and even on Fuerteventura. A lot of our wave conditions, especially around summer, are on large swells that don't actually break. So having a very glidey foil, high performance foil, works a lot better for those type of conditions. And I personally like that sort of really snappy, sort of progressive carving. Whereas the Marlin has this very linear carving, which allows for, let's say, a little bit like safer riding in bigger waves. So if it's actually a very large breaking wave, or actually it's like close in waves like shore break, like you get in the North Sea and so on. The marlin excels in those type of conditions, where you can really go for your turns and really push the foil hard, and not have to worry about it kicking or sort of accelerating out of your sort of comfort zone. So it really depends. If you like sort of that type of riding, which the marlin is good for, which is sort of that breaking wave, always under power, sort of more windsurf style wave riding, the marlin is perfect for you. If you're more like me, who likes sort of this sort of more glidey and then having that progressive carve in the turn, then it's more for you. I mean, so there's choice for both types of riding. Generally here on Fuerteventura, we typically get these sort of larger swells and that type of conditions. So typically most people here ride high aspect foils from all the different brands. Whereas if you look towards like the North Sea and so on, like Germany and so on, or also on the lakes when it's really windy, people tend to like the marlin for those type of conditions, because it just fits quite nicely into that. So you have to choose what you want to do.
Yes, for sure. But if a person wants to start with the waves, let's assume that he always winged in the lakes and want to start with the waves, which is the best aspect ratio you suggest?
Let's say if it's like small wind swell type waves, like you typically get like outside on the lakes, for example, in Garda, for example, there's so on, you want a high aspect foil. That'll just stay on that unbroken swell, and it'll allow you to learn and get comfortable with those type of conditions. Whereas a medium aspect foil will typically struggle on those type of downwind roller type conditions. Okay. If, however, your spot has actually a bit steeper waves, which are a little bit more like sort of proper wave-like, then go for the marlin to learn on. Again, it depends very much on the conditions you have.
Clear. Anyhow, I think that with both of them, you could surf somehow in both the condition, or not. I mean, we tested the marlin here in Italy, in Chioggia, which is in the north next to Venice. Typical sea condition where you have a very bad sea like the Adriatic Sea, which is not so clean in the waves. And I don't say anything else because I don't want to offend our Adriatic Ocean, let's say, because I like it a lot. And you see here, it is my city. Yes, these waves are pretty rare, but it can happen that also in the Adriatic in Italy you can surf a lot if you want. But yes, probably in our condition, I think that the marlin is probably is better. Anyhow, at the same time, I have here a Barracuda XL that I am yet testing, and I have to say that if you have very, very sloppy waves or wind swell, this efficiency, you can really feel the efficiency of this, because you can really surf 40 centimeters of waves not breaking. And thanks to the efficiency, you continue going.
Exactly.
Perfect. So another question, Avitech, NACA profiles and twisting of the foil section along the span. Could you share some experience about these two design parameters?
Okay, interesting question. Although I don't quite understand the first part. I mean, the NACA profiles, I mean, it's a profile. It's not really a design parameter. But I'm not sure who is still actually using purely NACA profiles. NACA essentially is just the sort of North American sort of. You can calculate a profile just by using certain parameters. Essentially, the cord length, the percentage thickness compared to cord length, and so on. So it's quite a nice tool. There's actually on this website which actually lets you calculate all your different profiles, which you can do. Starting with NACA profiles is actually it's a good starting point if you're going to start designing your own foils. And if you have a foil that, like I do a lot of hand shaping, so I'll typically start with a foil that I'm used to, and I'll sand it and change it to make it work the way I want to, and then I will go and compare it to like a NACA profile that's very similar, to see certain parameters like on the polar charts and so on, for the Reynolds numbers, just to have a reference. But I haven't used NACA profiles in a while. I just purely like that. Now we get to the cool part, like the twisting of the foil section, which essentially we're talking about washout, which means that you change the profile or the angle of attack of the profile as you progress from the chord. I should probably show you, because the Barracuda does this. So basically, washout would mean you start with a certain angle of attack on your root chord, and as you progress out to the tip, you change the angle of attack, or you can even change the profiles that you're using. Now, the Barracuda does both. So the Barracuda actually has a very slight twist. It's not a lot of washout. It's just essentially just over a degree, depending on the size. So your wingtip has a different angle of attack to the root chord. Added to that, the profile is essentially, our engineer loves saying morphing, or basically changing to a different profile towards the tip. Yeah, so there's an actually slightly flatter profile on the tip compared to the profile that's along the root chord. So the profile is actually morphing towards the tip, and it's also, we're adding twist to it, basically washout. The washout gives you this amazing sort of predictability on stall, which again is a bit of a difference between them, like the lower aspect foils and high aspect foils, like the Marlin and the Barracuda. The Barracuda has this cool thing that once you get to like slow enough stall speed, your center section will stall before your tips, which means you get this sort of little bit of a weird vibration, which tells you, hey, you're going too slow now. And it also creates this bit of a wall, which means this part of the foil has stalled, but the tips are still gripping, which gives you a chance to then put pressure back on your front foot, get it level again, and it will recatch, and you can keep going, essentially, which makes it very easy on slow takeoffs, especially if you're using a Barracuda S or something in really light wind when you're pumping. It really helps you sort of find that engaging point of the front wing. And if you're sort of just dock starting or pumping like the XL, that sort of gives you a good warning where you're too slow, push against that wall, get it back level, and you can continue. Whereas on the lower aspect foils, or a foil that doesn't have washout, you will essentially get to that stall point and it will just stall out. It won't give you a lot of warning to that. That's why most foils nowadays have basically a progression along here, like a twist. I actually don't know many that actually still have a complete flat profile progression where they don't change the profile along the span. Yeah, that would be very old school.
Clear. AVTech for me is clear, but just tell us if the answer was fine. Gunnar, you have another question regarding the Barracuda, because the Barracuda is, at least the XL, this one, is a beast.
Yeah,
is really a beast now. Wait a second. Here I am. Yeah. Because now I have also the issue of the light.
Yeah.
If we have a look, span 1.3 meters, chord, okay, area. So it's huge. It's huge. AR 10.6. But even if it is huge, I have the impression that it carves. Somehow it carves. And it carve. I was surprised because it really carves. So it's not a marketing word. It's really carves. Okay, it's big. You cannot do steep turn, and we know. But comparing this to another, let's say, hydrofoil with probably similar area, at least it carves much better. Which is the reason of this?
I don't want to tell you. There's multiple reasons for that. The reason that it has this outline that it has, never put this thing away. Back up a bit. Right. So first of all, you see it's got a very elliptical sort of planform. Elliptical essentially means, that your planform is sort of in an ellipse, which keeps your thickest section of your profiles fairly straight along the wing. So actually, especially towards, sorry, I'm trying the wrong side, especially on the first third of the front wing, your profiles are running fairly much in a straight line. But then the little secret sauce here is it actually has, if you can see from the scallop here, that changes sort of. Then the profile progression goes into more of a sweep towards the tips. This allows, and also having thin tips, this allows the tips to drop a bit more, and they're not so resistant to rolling. Yeah. Okay. Typically, if you have a very big foil, like let's say, like the Manta, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, that has a very sort of normal taper towards the tips. You still have fairly large tips. That's great if you want a very sort of stable and straight line foil. But because of the larger tips, it's always going to try to self-correct, and it's going to resist that rolling moment.
Yes.
But if you have thinner tips, those don't tend to resist the rolling moment. So it's very easy to push it into a turn.
Clear. Yeah. And so how in this case the width, the thin, let's say the thinness of the profile influence the behavior of the hydrofoil? Because you mentioned the Manta, no? But this one, even the XL, I don't know if you can see, it's pretty thin.
Yeah,
it's a thin hydrofoil for sure, considering the size.
Yeah. So when we talk about like the thickness, we are essentially talking about the percentage thickness to the cord, because you can still have a very thick profile, but if it matches with the cord. So typically we will talk about a cord like a profile percentage. So for example, the Barracudas have a 10% cord thickness, profile thickness relative to the cord, which is, it's not super thin actually, but it's thinner than a lot. Now the effect of having, let's say, like a thinner profile or less percentage is you will get more efficiency, more speeds, or less drag. Yeah. Again, that's very profile shape dependent also, essentially also where you keep that thickness. Sort of on a pump foil, that thickest section is actually quite far forward, like towards the leading edge. So those are typically between 12 and 24% if 0 is in the front of the distance of the cord. That's your typical pump foil. That's what gives them that sort of slow speed, like pumpability, that like really low takeoff speed, and that ability to pump at low speed. But also the drawback of having that profile that far forward is that as it reaches a certain speed, that pitching moment comes quite aggressively and early. Mm-hmm. Yeah, pitching moment is essentially any foil, or say profile, has a certain speed where if you didn't have a stabilizer, it would eventually just start by its own acceleration to sort of fly downwards, to pitch down. That's what we need a stabilizer for, mostly. And like I say, if you look at the Barracuda, that profile, the thickest part of the profile is quite far back. It's actually closer to I think it's 45% on the Barracuda. Yeah. So that will make that's what makes the Barracuda a lot faster and gives you that control at speed. Yeah, because the farther back you move that profile thickness, the more sort of stable and neutral it gets at sort of faster speeds and so on. It does sacrifice a little bit of the low end, but we can catch that up again by adding aspect ratio, by adding span.
Yes. Okay, clear. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you. In the meanwhile, also AVTech said thanks, clear. So your explanation was very fine. Now, let's continue with the question. Foil MV. Speaking about the Barracuda line, with which size should we not jump, if any?
So should you not jump? Well, I really don't recommend you jump with the XL. It's a lot of span, and it's not the jump that breaks foils, it's bad landings. Now, just to say that, I don't know any single manufacturer which will actually guarantee your foil for jumping. Almost every manufacturer that I know of will have in the small print, don't jump the foil. Like there's no guarantee for it. The main problem for that is we can only essentially guarantee the foil for if somebody jumps it perfectly normally. It doesn't do weird stuff like land like a large foil directly on the wingtip. A heavier guy with a larger board, with a long mast, if you have a bad landing, you are quite likely to snap a mast. You might crack the foil. You might bend a screw, something like that. So essentially, no foil is actually recommended for jumping in reality. But if the foils you should really definitely not jump, or land, let's say not land badly, or like anything with a more than a meter span. There's a lot of force on the whole system there. So, however, nowadays it's more likely that you will break a part of the mast or the board itself, like the tracks on the board, than the actual bottom section of the foil. You have a lot more leverage at the mast foot, at the plate, or on the tracks. Yeah. So if you jump like a large foil like the Barracuda XL, you are actually more likely to break the tracks in your board or damage your mast than you are the actual glider or the front wing itself. You also add the little risk of injury, something that's as that high span, like a 1320 span. There's a lot of leverage. So if you land badly and you have straps on, it won't give. It's going to go where it's going to go. And if your ankles are attached to the board, that's not a good thing. Yeah. The main sizes on the Barracuda that are good for jumping are the M and the S. Yeah. I will typically freestyle most of the time on the S, and in sort of lighter conditions, I will be on the M. Yeah. The L can be jumped too. It's fine. It's just, I think it's a bit overkill. I mean, I'm 85 kilo, and if I have to use the L, it's typically light wind anyway, and it's typically not conditions I freestyle in.
Clear. Gunnar, which is a light wind in your idea? Just for me to understand, because typically not from you, but I hear about light wind, and the people speak about 50 knots. For me, light wind is 7 knots. But what is the typical light wind for you?
Realistically, it depends on, again, the discipline you're doing. Sure. Let's talk about the stupid light wind. We're talking about racing here. So, for example, for racing, light wind is when we can start a race, which means 6 to 7 knots.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we want to get going. That's racing light wind. Normal light wind is like when you can have fun with the normal foil and so on. I would say with anything like under 10 knots is light wind. I would personally consider light wind. That would be, I would be using like an M or an L Barracuda, and like a 6 meter wing. Yeah, that would be light wind for me. And I might have to use a bigger board. And anything sort of under 50 knots is what I call sort of like your medium wind. Yeah, sort of 20, 15 knots, something like that. It's medium wind. And anything over 20 knots, we're starting to get into sort of strong wind, high wind.
Okay. So I am really aligned with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Next question. Wing foil advice. Thanks for all your answer. At the same volume, compare the two front wings with the same AR and span, but just 1/3 4 millimeters thinner. Which will be better in terms of speed, start agility, and glide?
Okay.
You have already answered at my last question. I read later his previous message. But now, if you want to answer again in 1 second.
Well, there's some parts of that which we haven't touched on. So, yeah, this question is actually amazing because it explains one of my like little annoyances with, let's say, the industry. That one of the things that annoys me a little bit about the whole foiling industry is that surface areas become a sort of standard to define size, and essentially through size, the light wind performance of a front wing, which if you look at the math is completely wrong. Like that's why if you take a high aspect wing and you compare it to low aspect wing, the surface area means nothing. You can't compare 1,000 square meter low aspect wing with 1,000 square meter high aspect wing. The 1,000 square meter high aspect wing has hell of a lot more lift than that low aspect for the given speed of the foil traveling through the water or the air. So the one variable in that lift equation, the lift coefficient equation, is the thickness, or it's defined in the equation as shape. So small changes. I actually did the math a couple of years back. There's a nice Excel sheet somewhere online where if you double the surface area of a front wing, you can get the same additional lift effect by just increasing the thickness of the foil by 10%.
Okay.
Yeah. So like a 10% increase in thickness in shape will actually give you almost the same as doubling the surface area of the foil in sort of the actual lift coefficient. So let's say the surface area sort of scales very linear, whereas the shape scales like exponentially. So like a 3/4 of a millimeter thinner will give you, let's say, slightly more speed. Yeah. If you mean with start agility, essentially like the stall speed, it will cost you a little bit on stall speed, so it will take a little bit more to get going. But it will also increase the glide at speed. It will increase the glide speed, which means you need to be going faster. But it will also glide at a faster speed. It will sort of cruise faster. So everything will sort of feel faster. What it typically won't affect is the top end speed if you're only changing thickness. Yeah. And there's also quite a limit of changing the thickness without changing the chord. So typically, if you want to make a faster, thinner foil, you reduce the chord to reduce the thickness of the profile. If you just squish the profile, there's a lot of profiles out there which absolutely hate that. And then it will start doing weird things. You get ventilations and vibrations and so on. It's because you're actually changing the complete profile shape by squeezing the profile thickness. So what you typically want to do, is typically why it's also easier to go higher aspect, is as you shrink the chord length, that profile thickness goes down for that profile. So if you want to use the same profile and get thinner, you have to go higher aspect, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Clear. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thanks a lot. I think that you answered. But commenting what you said and what we said also. Already 10 p.m. We are. I just asked you 2 questions out of 10. So at 10:30 we will close the session. So don't worry.
Yeah.
No, I said at the beginning that hydrofoil is a very complex topic.
Oh yeah.
So and it's not okay. We are somehow some geek or some nerdy people because we like to go in the water to understand what is behind an hydrofoil development, but most of the people does not have the patience to go and study the details. So for this reason, it's very important that who builds hydrofoil really right in the different product family. Which is the typical uses of this hydrofoil? Why to choose this? Why to choose that? Because really a lot of people are completely lost in during the choice, and for this reason previously I showed your board and hydrofoil finder because I find it very useful. Very good. AVTech this evening is really on fire because I had this question also in my mind. Angle shims between the board and the foil, make it sense? Wait, because I had also my question. Shimming of stabilizer. How to shim and how to understand which is the best shim, except from reading the technical data of the hydrofoil.
Okay, so let's start with plate shim. Sort of like the angle shim between board and foil, as we plate shim as we know it. It is great for compensating for a board that's typically doesn't have enough tail rocker or too much tail rocker for the foil. Tail rocker is essentially that last curve. Basically, if you look at the middle of the board and you curve it back towards the tail, that's your tail rocker. Imagine if you have that board flat on the ground and then you can rock the board, and that's the back part. Now, if your board doesn't have enough tail rocker, there's not enough of a delta between your board and the front wing of the foil, which means typically you want about 1 or 2 degrees delta between the nose of the board and the foil. So essentially, if the board is flat on the ground or the water, your foil should be pointing slightly down. The front wing should be pointing slightly down. Okay, why is that? Because essentially, as you rock up the board, you're bringing that foil up until its actual natural angle of attack. Yeah? Now, the way foils work, and there's a reason you need plate shims, is that the angle of the front wing will always be the same. There's a natural angle of attack, or the natural angle of incidence, as it's known in aerodynamic terms. That front wing is always going to fly at that angle of attack as it's set relative to the angle of the stabilizer. You have a delta or difference between angle of attack between the front wing and the downward angle of attack of the stabilizer. Now, if your nose of your board feels like it's hanging, that's because it's too flat, which means that actually when the foil is flying essentially a little bit nose up, your board is pointing down towards it. It means because everything is too flat. Now, if you add a plate shim to increase that angle, now as that foil comes up, it's actually also lifting the nose of the board up. So by having that delta, you have that sort of nice front foot pressure. So if you feel that no matter what you do, where you position the foil, is that your front foot feels too low and it's hanging, you need to increase that delta. So you need to put a positive plate shim there, which will angle foil and board apart. If you have the opposite feeling, that I've always got way too much foot pressure, it feels like the board is flying nose up all the time, that means you typically have too much delta, and that's why you would have the opposite. You'd have a plate shim that reduces that delta between the two. Now, this is something that cannot be corrected by shimming the stabilizer. Okay, what shimming the stabilizer does is essentially decide the pitch resistance of the foil first of all. So if you imagine if you didn't have the stabilizer, you have the pitching moment of the front wing, which means it'll fly perfectly well at slow speeds, and then eventually it hits a certain speed and it'll just go, it'll angle down. What the stabilizer does, and that's why it's the opposite way round, the sort of profile is reversed, is that as the front wing starts to pitch down, this will actually get a higher angle of attack and will push the foil back into a neutral position. So it's always like a little bit of a balancing act between your front wing and the stabilizer, sort of keeping everything there. Typically, the higher the angle of attack of the stabilizer, the stiffer everything gets. And it can actually also create a bit more lift because you're adding like more natural angle of attack to the front wing. So the more this is set, let's say, angled down in flying mode, which is actually increasing the angle of attack of the stabilizer, the more it's going to push up against the front wing, the faster you go. So typically, if you actually have too much angle of attack, you'll always feel that it's quite neutral at slow speed. But as you increase in your speed, that front wing is going to start raising its angle of attack, which gives you this very sort of exponential increase in front foot pressure. That typically means if that's happening, you need to reduce the angle of attack of your stabilizer. That's also why typically for pump foiling, we tend to use negative shims, which like decrease the angle of attack of the stabilizer, which gives you sort of this very easy to pump thing. Because there we actually like having a very unloaded front foot. We like to load our back foot a bit more and allow the foil to glide. Another cool effect of reducing the angle of attack, obviously, of the stabilizer, it gets less draggy. Okay. Now, here's where it gets a bit complicated. Going fast, however, with a foil that has not enough stabilizer angle is extremely difficult. That's essentially because if you really want to go fast, let's say plus 30 knots, you need stability. The foil needs to be handleable. You need that sort of stiffness, that that foil's not moving around everywhere for every little sort of pressure change that's happening. So that essentially, if you're looking at sort of racing gear, the angle of attack of the stabilizer is closer to like 3 degrees. Yeah. Whereas if you look at pump foils, there it's closer to 1 degrees or even 0 degrees. Yeah. So there actually may be more drag on the whole system by having more angle, but because you can control it better and you're getting power back to overcome that drag through your wing or through your kite, you can actually ride with more angle on your stabilizer.
Clear. And regarding the shimming of the board, how do you? Is there an empirical way to understand which shim do you have to mount, or is just a trial and error on the wall?
It's a matter of taste.
Okay.
Yeah, but I typically tell people, look, start with like a 2-degree shim, because that's somewhere nice in the middle. And it's also ask them, what's the problem? Do you feel that your nose is too low? Is your nose too high? Typically, if I see them ride, I can typically tell immediately, it's like, okay, your nose is too high. Get a negative shim on there. It'll flatten everything off. We'll start with 2, and then we'll see how it feels. And that's the other way around. If we see that the nose is always hanging on the board, then we put a positive shim on there and say, okay, like how does it feel now? And then we'll go from there. Like 1 degree is quite a lot already, like in a change. So
clear.
But typically, if you have a board like an old, pre 2022, not 23 board, sorry, they all had, like, with the exception of the Indiana ones, they all had like a completely flat tail. There was no tail rocker whatsoever in those boards. Those typically need a positive plate shim. Yeah. I sold a lot when I had the shop, especially for sap foil, foils, and using it with duotone boards, for example, back in like 2022, 2023.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Clear.
typically the typical reason you would have to have that.
Okay. And regarding the shim between the board and the foil, we were speaking about it also last week when we had here Max Galtarossa, the shaper of Kite Loose. And we were speaking about this topic, and someone from the audience told us, and I agree with him, that it's not really easy to find some board shims on the market. It seems that you need to create something by 3D printer or ask to your friend that has a 3D printer. Why this? Could not be interesting to have some board shims available widely.
I think the main thing is timing. The market for that's really gone because it's changed. Like, okay, 2021, 2022, like early 2023, there were like only about 2 or 3 brands making wing foil boards, proper ones with tail rocker, normal scoop rocker lines, where they would work with all foils, and that's it. But nowadays, since 2023, even the big brands like Duotone, Starboard, Armstrong, whatever, they've all sort of started making wing boards with tail rocker. So now all the foils work. So it's very rare now to actually need the plate shim.
Okay, clear.
It's then it just comes down to somebody really likes that high front foot pressure, or they have an old foil, like say it's combining let's say back then it was Fanatic foil with a Indiana board. There you'd actually need to have a negative, because then you'd actually have too much angle. So that's the only reason now. So there's not so much demand for a product like that.
Okay, clear.
So people 3D printing, and there's like 2 or 3 brands. I think it's North Shore Ink and so on, like from Hawaii, and there's a few other brands around in Europe, which do 3D printed shims, and that's But it's not something where you would sell thousands of nowadays, because just the industry sorted itself out.
Understand. Very good. Oh, in the meanwhile, Gunnar, I tell you that we reach 35 people listening to us, and then the video will stay online, which are not a huge number, but considering that it's the first time we go English, is neither not so bad. So it means that the people like when you explain in detail these topics. Foil MV, to add to this question, which question now? I don't have any idea. Why don't pump foil have large areas but very thin profile to go super fast and glide? Thin is less than 15 millimeters. Is it the limit of carbon resistance with long span?
Well, that's one of the reasons, it's just like the main things in the industry at the moment that we're starting to evolve is essentially better constructions methods, which allow us to make thinner hydrofoils. Like the Barracuda XL wasn't possible 2 years ago. Okay, it would have been could have built it, but it probably would have snapped, especially for a rider over 90 kilos. Now we have a strong enough construction and the carbon that we use that will stay in one piece. So in the future, there's not any reason for that not to work. If you look, for example, at the beta foil, which is like a double-masted pump foil, that's fine. It has two masts to support the span, and that's got a very thin profile, and that's very efficient. That's like 2 meters something span. It's really cool. Now, however, there's the thing. Pump foiling, sure. Like some people like going for distance and like length, which with a high span wing like that is perfectly fine. But the reason that we have, for example, the Condor M and the S is that people still want to turn on the water. They want to carve and turn. They want to have fun. And that's actually more people are, once they learn to pump foil, are more into sort of that, staying a bit closer to their docks. So they don't have to swim back so much, but then trying tricks like sitting on the board, dragging their feet, doing hard carves, trying to go for a 360 and so on. That's something that's more in the minds of most people. Breaking long distance records and so on, that's like, say, it's a bit of a smaller market with not so much demand, where you would actually have these super fast, very high span, very thin front wings. But yeah, we're probably going to see that type of front wing coming anyway. Yeah, because we're always pushing the limit. And I know that we've got our own team riders like Nicholas asking, hey, we want a thin, super high aspect, super thin front wing, because he wants to go like, again, 5 hours and faster. So yeah, as if we can make it work and build it without it breaking, we're gonna do it. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. My last question. Someone of us saw a video that you explained on Indiana adapter for axis foil. Why this choice despite a great Indiana range of foil?
It comes to a little bit of thinking a little bit about the topic of sustainability in the whole sport. Especially if a lot of people have come new into the sport from other sports, the typically first question they ask me is like, oh, is the front wing of this foil compatible with like a fuselage from another like brand, or can I use the mast from this brand and use the front wing from another brand? And then you tell them, nope. They're like a bit taken aback. But yeah, I mean, our industry sort of evolved quite like highly competitive. So everybody's doing their own thing, and they typically don't want like to make their material compatible with other brands for obvious reasons. But essentially, we had the thought, and also the guy from Foil Only, which actually brought up the idea. It would be cool because especially in Switzerland, that's why we chose Axis. There's a lot of Axis riders and there's a lot of Indiana riders. Yeah, essentially those are the two big brands in Switzerland. And then we've had a lot of Axis riders go, man, we really love that Condor, but I don't want to have to change my entire like setup. I really like my Axis mast, and you know, can't like, why can't you like, you know, do something? And we're like, okay, why can't we? So our engineer Jan came up with a system. So it works both ways. So we have that adapter fuselage, which allows you to use Axis masts, the aluminum and the carbon, with any of our HP front wings. So that's the Rides, the Manta XL, the Condor XL. Those all can be used with an Axis mast. So if you're an Axis rider, you can choose pretty much any of those Indiana foils which are compatible with that adapter system. If you are an Indiana rider and you have an Indiana mast and you're like, I want to try an Axis glider, we have an adapter for that too. That slots into our aluminum mast. It doesn't work with our carbon system, but it works perfectly fine with our aluminum mast. So you can use the Indiana aluminum mast with a Axis glider. So it gives riders from both those brands an option to, you know, have more options without having to like completely buy a whole Indiana system and vice versa. So we think that's actually quite a cool way of making essentially less waste and also just making it easy for people to try out different things.
Yes, no, it makes sense for sure. And at the end of the day, is a way for the riders to be more flexible. than compared to the actual situation. Okay, guys, 10 minutes and we will close the session. So if you have any further questions, just write them in chat. Gunnar, I have a lot of questions that I did not ask, but I will try to ask you the more interesting one.
Okay.
Let's say that you have been a sort of a father of the hydrofoil, or at least you have a very big experience. In the past 3 years, the hydrofoil changed a lot, really a lot. Or let's say in the last 5 years, there are now very specialistic hydrofoil, different construction. So the development has been huge. Where we will go in a few years, and in which direction?
I think the personally, I don't think the actual on a design side that there's been a lot of evolution. We are essentially still using the same profiles we have been since 2016. So in the last 9 years, there hasn't been a massive change. Let's say a lot of the, let's say newer designers and the other brands are starting to like catch up a little bit. But on that side, there's not been a lot of progress. But what the big progress has been in materials and sort of construction methods. So now we are actually being able to take some of our like older ideas which didn't quite work because we couldn't build them, especially we couldn't mass produce them, and we can mass produce them now. The Barracuda being a prime example of this. This is a foil that couldn't have mass produced in China 2 years ago. Now we can. And these factories, I was actually there last year to check out what any progress they have and any new technologies they have. But there's some really cool stuff. So that we can actually start again, like working on thinner profiles because the carbon's got better, the manufacturing processes have gotten better. So it's going to be a little bit more like evolution in that way because the possibilities are getting better for what we can build. So we're going to get stronger foils. We can actually get thinner foils that last longer. So you'll have thinner foils which you can freestyle with, for example, thinner pump foils, which will sort of push the limit on that efficiency side and so on. The masts are getting thinner. Like everybody's working on trying to get the mast as thin as possible, where sort of our new standard nowadays is like 14 millimeters now. In a couple of years, that's going to start going down to like the 11 or 10 millimeters, like on the race foiling masts. So that's going to be sort of the cool part.
Clear.
Right, there's another question.
Yes. Super Kauna. What do you think about the reflex curve on the under part of the section of the wings, like the last Kane the Wild wings or some Armstrong high aspect wings?
Yeah, it's good if you need it. Like I said, not every profile and every use case needs that. Let's say for that's a little bit the cost of that, having that concave on your underside, on your introdose of your foil, is that it actually reduces speed. It also reduces your stall speed, which means it's, let's say, a little bit better for pumping, but it comes at the cost of a little bit of that efficiency and liveliness of the foil. Sort of, it's like I said, it's not a new thing. That reflex curve has been on the underside of the foils. It started when we started. One of the first foils that we used, the profiles that we used, like in 2010, 11, and so on, was the Epler profile, trying to remember it's I think E317 or something like that. That had a massive reflex in the back, and it worked really good. It is essentially the main hydrofoiling profile, like it was for like 5 years. But it does have some drawbacks too. So if it's for like easy pumping and sort of getting up on the foil easily, it's great. It's a great profile. It attaches the water really well and holds that attachment really good, giving you sort of that low stall speed. But it comes at a cost of efficiency. The Barracuda has a very slight recurve, like it almost nothing. It's there, but I took that out because I wanted that efficiency forward. Yeah, because by sort of reducing that quite down, it allows the foil to fly a lot farther forward as it's gliding. So again, you have to decide what you want your foil to do, and then that you decide accordingly how much reflex you put into there.
Perfect, thank you. Guys, in the meanwhile, in 5 minutes, we will stop the session for today. So if you have any question, or if you have any comment, or if you think that this live has been helpful for you or not, please send us your comments in the chat, and it will be very useful for us. And also for the Italian, I don't know how many of our typical Italian audience is connected. I think just a few, honestly. Please let me know also what do you think about the English, if you had the possibility to understand what we are saying or not. Gunnar, another question from my side.
Sure.
We did not speak about boards.
Sure.
We did not have time, unfortunately. But quick comment, quick final comment. Where is going the development of the boards? We saw the mid length, and the mid length will be my next board for sure. I have already an idea of which one. And we were speaking also with Galt from Luz last week, and it seems that now the direction typically, mainly regarding wing foil, is to have some boards with less width. So let's say thinner boards, a sort of. What do you think about it? Where we will go?
I think we're going to sort of a more wide range of boards for specific use cases, let's say like that. The mid-length boards, or like I said, are a great compromise out of light wind board and sort of your typical compact shapes. We already see that like the next evolution of the mid-length from last year is to go shorter again and a little bit wider. So last year we sort of went like essentially take the downwind board, keep the same width, and then shrink down the length. And now it's again, we're shrinking that down even more a little bit and gone a little bit wider. If you look at our Superfly, it's called the CML, compact mid-length, because having too much length, again, it makes the board a little bit less fun, less agile. You have more swing weight. Yeah, sure, it gives you that efficiency in super light wind, but it does cost you when it's high wind with windage and so on. We still have like the early bird range, which is like 3 boards, which are like your classic mid-length shape, thin, long, yeah, for like really, really light wind days. Yeah. Now that's cool. And that's personally, I understand that concept quite well. And especially for para winging, I think that's definitely the way to go. But personally, for still normal riding, wave riding, freestyle riding, I see the boards going in a slightly different way. What I've done on the float that's over there is I've kept the width. I have reduced it. I have reduced it by an inch over all the boards, but I've reduced that only that it's kept the width mirrored everything here. The widest part is actually moved like forward a bit, but on the tail is hold on. If you look at the tail is quite pinned. So the tail is very thin. So it takes away the area where it's not needed to allow carvability and still give you that efficiency. But it keeps the volume in the front for like if you're jumping and you're landing, especially doing freestyle. If you have a very thin board like my G Pro 74 back there, like I said, that's an amazing light wind board, but freestyling with it is not that great because it's only 18 inches wide. And if you land slightly sideways on something like that, it's very hard to control it. It's typically going to sink down or the rail's going to dig in. Whereas with the slightly wider board, yeah, if you're doing freestyle or jumps, that's going to basically recover a lot easily. And I find the same in sort of light wind wave riding. Having the extra width is a lot more comfortable than having a very thin board, especially if it's very choppy, very wavy conditions. Like I said, if you're caught like inside like a set, it's very difficult with a longer board sometimes to even get up when it's only like 18 inches or 19 inches wide. Yeah, that's quite difficult because you got the waves from the side. So there's different use cases for the different type of boards. I don't see the industry going pure mid-length. I think there are still very good use cases for the compact boards over there, because there are difficult conditions where then those mid-length boards will also still struggle. So again, depending on what you want for yourself and what your conditions are, you still will have those type choices of boards. The compact boards will get more efficient. The mid-length boards will sort of start getting easier to use. I think we'll probably 5 years down the line, just in windsurfing, go to sort of a nice compromise out of all three of those different types of designs. Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
Clear. Thank you. Then I will have some question about Parawing, but in case we will do it in the next session, because that is a completely different topic.
Sure.
So we are perfect in time. It's 10:30. AVTech was great. Thanks. Wingfoil advice absolutely to be redone. Nino, Churleo, thank you for this very interesting session. Grande Michela.
You're welcome.
Okay. So and I add also Grande Gunnar, because you gave us really a lot of inside information, and I liked it a lot. Guys, before closing the session, I don't know. I am not paid by Indiana. I tell you honestly, I am completely independent. But I saw that in their website now there are some huge discount. There are some material in discount, and here you have also an additional discount code. Just have a look, because there should be a sort of outlet. Okay, here in the outlet there are some very, very, very good offers. Some material, I have to say, is out of stock, but there are also several material and without making any names of other brands. But here you can find a new board with or a new hydrofoil with the bags and so on at the smaller price that you can find online, even in the website of the brands that sell direct. So just have a look. It could be interesting if you are searching for an offer or for a good deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve Foils, last one before we close. So guys, thanks a lot. The recording will be in our YouTube channel. If you have the possibility, if you like our content, just think to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Instagram, and also for sure to Gunnar and Indiana One. Gunnar, it's been a pleasure. Now I think that you will have a very tough day of working surfing tomorrow. Unfortunately, my day will be much different. I will stay in front of the laptop all day long, but good for you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your time and for your availability.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the interview, and thanks everyone who was asking questions. Love talking about foiling, so awesome.
Very good. Thank you. Ciao, guys.